I still can't believe how fast things spiraled out of control that day. There I was, standing in front of the entire school courtyard, feeling like I just got knifed in the back by the one person I thought had it out for me, Jake. You know, my best friend since forever. He didn't just unfollow me on social media or ignore my texts. No, Jake chose the worst possible moment. Right in front of Sarah, the friend we both trusted a ton, he called me out in the middle of lunch, loud enough for half the school to hear. You wouldn't believe the words he used. Things about me that I never thought he'd say, stuff that didn't just sting but cut deep. I stood there, frozen, while a crowd gathered, the buzzing of whispers wrapping around me like a noose tightening. And somehow, instead of defending myself, I just watched as everyone's eyes darted between us, some clearly eager to pick sides. The heat behind my cheeks had nothing to do with the sun that was baking down on us. I kept asking myself, how did we even get to this point? Because just hours before, Jake and I were the same team. Hell, we were the kind of friends people thought were glued at the hip. But now, he might as well have been a stranger ready to throw me under the bus. I wanted to shout, to scream, to ask him why, but the words got stuck in my throat. The kind of shock that isn't just about betrayal, but confusion. Jake, my pal, who I trusted with way too many secrets, had officially done the unthinkable. And the worst part? Sarah, who I once thought was neutral in all of this, looked like she didn't know what to do either, caught in the middle like some awkward referee in a heavyweight fight they never signed up for. So yeah, that moment, standing alone amid a crowd that suddenly felt like a jury, was probably the lowest point. But honestly, it also made me curious, not about revenge or drama, but about the story behind all this madness. How do you go from best friends to bitter enemies overnight? That's the story I've been piecing together ever since. And trust me, it's not what you'd expect. Jake and I, man, we were like those classic duo everyone notices in school. The kind everybody figured would stay tight forever. We met back in kindergarten, if you can believe that, bonding over shared snack stashes and a mutual disdain for the playground slide. From building forts in the backyard to late-night gaming marathons, I couldn't imagine life without him. He was the guy who'd have my back no matter what, or at least that's how it felt. Sarah? She was that cool, easygoing friend we both kind of gravitated toward. Wavy hair that never seemed to stay in place, a laugh that could make you crack up in the middle of a boring class, and this way of listening like you were the most important person in the world. She wasn't just in our circle. She was like the glue, or maybe the secret sauce pulling all our different craziness into one hilarious, chaotic mix. School was pretty much the usual blend of homework, awkward crushes, and weekend hangouts, but this semester, something shifted. Our history teacher, Mr. Thompson, announced a big deal project. Not the usual, write a report and turn it in kind of thing either. No, this was the kind where you had to team up and create a full-on presentation, live, in front of the whole school for the annual history contest. And here's where things got interesting. Jake and I had always planned to team up, naturally. The idea of tackling this project without him felt weird, like trying to throw a punch with one hand tied behind your back. But as the days passed, the vibe between us started to get off. At first, it was small stuff. Jake would brush off my ideas with a distracted, yeah, maybe, or suddenly become super busy whenever I suggested we meet to plan. Sarah, on the other hand, started showing up in the picture more and more, like she was suddenly available all the time for project sessions. And the weird thing was, Jake began to seek her opinion on everything, even when I was right there. It was like I was watching my own best friend slowly drift into some kind of mini conspiracy that I wasn't a part of. I remember one afternoon in the library trying to hash out our presentation outline. Jake was sitting there, fingers tapping on his phone, mostly ignoring me. Meanwhile, Sarah was animatedly suggesting ideas, and Jake wasn't just listening, he was totally soaking it in, nodding like a true believer. When I tried to jump in with a suggestion, Jake just gave me this look like, seriously? And that stung. It was subtle, but unmistakable. And boy, did the tension get thicker once the school buzz started about who might actually win the contest. Our group was a favorite, but suddenly, whispers about Jake and Sarah's chemistry started cropping up. You know how high school can be? Everyone's the self-appointed detective, baker of rumors, and professional gossip rolled into one. I tried not to let it bother me too much. I thought maybe I was just being paranoid or insecure. After all, Jake would never do anything to purposely mess with me, right? But then the little things began piling up. Like when my name didn't make it onto the project's title slide, even though I did a big chunk of the research. Or how Jake suddenly stopped answering my messages about meeting to practice our speech, while Sarah's inbox was glowing with his replies. And yeah, I reached out every time I tried to fix things. Once, I even showed up at Jake's place unannounced, hoping we could just talk it through in person. But he barely opened the door, and when he did, his expression was closed off like I was some stranger trying to crash his life. Sarah seemed caught in the middle too. She wasn't the troublemaker I expected. Sometimes, I'd catch her glancing at me, eyes full of apology or maybe guilt. I couldn't quite tell. She never said anything directly about Jake or me, but the way she'd suddenly change the subject or disappear whenever I brought him up only made the mystery deepen. One day, about a week before the contest, I was heading to the locker hallway when I saw them near my locker. Jake and Sarah looking, I don't know, secretive is the best word. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but as I passed by, I caught a snippet of their conversation that didn't sit right with me. "Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything?" Sarah whispered. Jake's grin was sharp, almost like a challenge. "No way. He trusts me too much. It's all going according to plan." My stomach did that weird flip. Plan? Suddenly, I wasn't just confused or hurt. I felt like someone handed me a puzzle with a piece missing. After that, things between us shifted more dramatically. Jake's actions weren't just neglectful, they felt deliberate. Like when he accidentally deleted my part of our joint draft on Google Docs or spread that little rumor about me not pulling my weight. Some of it was petty, some hit low, to be honest. And the worst part? Every time I tried to talk to him to break through the wall he was building, it was like I was banging my head against a brick wall. The friendship I thought was ironclad was cracking under the strain, and Sarah was tangled right in the middle, too tangled to just step aside. So yeah, by the time the contest was just days away, I was staring down a whole mess I didn't know how to fix. Then, out of nowhere, I stumbled on something that threw everything into a new, messier light, something about Jake and Sarah that made me question everything I thought I knew about loyalty and friendship. But that's where it gets wild, like really wild. You know that sinking feeling when someone you thought you knew suddenly turns into a whole different person overnight? Yeah, that's exactly what started happening with Jake. At first, it was subtle enough that I tried to shrug it off. Like, there was this one day when I showed up at our usual hangout spot, the skate park near the school, only to find Jake and Sarah laughing over some inside joke I wasn't part of. I waved, tried to join in, but Jake just gave me this tight-lipped smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. It was like I was suddenly the awkward third wheel in my own friendship. Then came the little sabotages. The kind that don't make headlines but definitely make you question what the hell you did wrong. One time, I was working on the project's research notes on my laptop at the library. I stepped away for a minute to get some water, came back, and half my work was gone. Poof. No auto backup, no undo, just vanished. Now, I know losing work happens, but the weird thing was, Jake was the only other one who had access. When I asked him later, he just shrugged and said, "Must have been a glitch. Yeah, okay, sure." Another time, during lunch, I overheard some classmates whispering that I was only riding Jake's coattails for the project. None of it was true, of course, and I knew Jake had started the rumor. It wasn't just childish, it was hurtful. My stomach twisted every time I heard a giggle or caught someone sneaking a nasty glance my way. Trying to fix things felt like trying to piece together a shattered vase without the glue. I remember texting Jake multiple times, just wanting to clear the air. Sometimes he'd respond hours later with one-word replies like, busy or whatever. Other times, just silence. One night, I sent a message asking if we could talk. Really talk. His reply was this cold, "Not now." It stung, but I tried to respect that even though it felt like doors I thought were open slammed shut in my face. And Sarah, she was a wild card. She wasn't the enemy, but she sure wasn't the friend I needed either. Every time I tried to bring up what was going on between Jake and me, her eyes would flicker away like she was carrying a secret she wasn't ready to share. There was this one moment during a group project session when I caught her looking at Jake with this almost guilty expression, then at me, like she was torn in half. I wanted to ask her what was up, but the words just wouldn't come out. Then came the day I accidentally stumbled onto something that completely rewrote the script of our falling out. I was at school early, heading to my locker to grab some notes, when I saw Jake and Sarah standing close, beyond just friends close. I won't lie, my curiosity got the better of me, and I slowed down, pretending to look at my schedule, but really eavesdropping. Sarah asked in an almost hushed, nervous tone, "Are you sure he doesn't suspect anything?" And Jake's reply? Man, that grin he flashed was chilling. "No way! He trusts me too much. It's all going according to plan." I froze. Plan? What plan? My head spun as 1,000 questions flooded in, but I played it cool, pretending I hadn't caught that chilling exchange. Whatever had been breaking us apart wasn't just some high school drama. This felt calculated, like a plot in a movie I wasn't meant to see. The trust I'd put into Jake was starting to dissolve into something else, something darker. That night, I sat at my desk replaying their conversation over and over in my head. Who were they planning against? Me? Were they working together to twist the knife deeper? The friendship I thought was ironclad was now looking like a fragile house of cards, ready to collapse. And the worst part? I still couldn't figure out why. What had I missed? What had Jake been hiding behind that easygoing grin all these years? The countdown to the project presentation was ticking, but my mind was elsewhere, tangled up in secrets I wasn't sure I wanted to uncover but somehow couldn't ignore. The whole thing was about to blow. and nothing was going to be the same when it did. After that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something huge, like a final piece to a puzzle that nobody wanted me to find. So, I did what probably wasn't the smartest move. I waited until Jake and Sarah were both at school, then I quietly followed Sarah after class, hoping to catch some clue, any clue, about what was going on. Turns out the story wasn't the betrayal I imagined. It was something way messier and, honestly, kind of heartbreaking. Sarah hadn't been part of some sneaky plan against me. No, she was caught in this terrible spot where she felt pressured by Jake but also trapped by her own feelings. Jake, it turned out, had been going through a rough time, stuff he hadn't told me about because he didn't want to seem weak. He thought stepping back and pushing me away would make me safer from whatever was brewing in his life. His grin and plan weren't about sabotage. It was about protecting something he thought might hurt me if I got too close. When I finally confronted him, it started off tense. I said the words I'd been holding in for weeks. "Why did you do all this? Why drag me through the mud in front of everyone?" And honestly, his response caught me off guard. He didn't deny it. Instead, he looked almost relieved. "I was scared, not of you, but of losing control," he said quietly. "And yeah, I handled it badly. But it wasn't about turning on you, it was about trying to keep you out of my mess." Sarah, too, opened up after everything came out in the open. She admitted to feeling stuck, like she was trying to be the middle ground, but ended up making things worse for everyone. The rumor, the deleted work, the cold shoulders, it was a reaction to Jake spiraling, not an intentional attack on me. Walking away from that confrontation, I realized how blind I'd been to the pressures Jake was under. I guess when you're hurt, it's easier to see the surface cracks and assume the worst. But peeling back the layers? That's a whole different story. It wasn't easy to forgive. True forgiveness never is. But it felt less about excusing Jake's actions and more about freeing myself from the bitterness that was eating me up inside. We never went back to being glued at the hip. Not quite. But there was a new kind of respect between us, a quiet understanding that sometimes people mess up the people they care about the most, and it's messy and confusing. Sarah stayed close too, though things shifted in subtle ways, the tension easing now that nothing was left unsaid. And the project? Well, we still crushed it at the contest, but that achievement felt secondary compared to what we'd learned about trust, honesty, and the fragile threads that hold friendships together. Looking back, I can't say I'd want to relive all that confusion or pain. But I'm glad I stuck around long enough to learn that sometimes the biggest betrayals aren't what they first seem. You just have to decide if you want to let them define you or if you're ready to write a new chapter. So, here's my question for anyone listening. Have you ever had a friend switch teams on you? And if so, did you ever find the real reason behind it or just move on? Because the truth, no matter how messy, might just be the bridge back to something better.